Nonso stood on the wide campgrounds of the NYSC camp in Kano, the hot sun overhead doing little to dampen his spirits. He had longed for this, an opportunity to experience the beauty and diversity of Nigeria firsthand. The food, the languages, the people, all of it fascinated him. An Igbo man from Enugu, he had never traveled this far north before. But here in Kano, he felt alive, surrounded by the richness of the north. Everything seemed to be falling into place. He had won Mr. Kano during the camp pageant, surprising even himself. Handsome, tall, and confident, he was the center of attention, enjoying the variety of experiences that came with camp life. His friends from university laughed with him as they joked about their shared memories and new adventures. Life felt as though it was moving perfectly according to plan, until he met Ralia. It was a hot afternoon when he and his friends decided to head to the Mami market for lunch. The air was filled with the smell of suya and kilishi, and Nonso's stomach rumbled in anticipation. They weaved through the buzzing crowd of vendors and corpers in their white shirts and khaki shorts when Nonso saw her. His steps slowed. His heart did a strange flip. She stood at a suya stand, her dark, glowing skin radiant in the sunlight. She had the kind of beauty that demanded attention, a quiet elegance. Her long, flowing hijab framed her face, but it was her eyes, bright and almond-shaped, that captured him. She didn't see him at first, focused on chatting with the vendor, but Nonso couldn't tear his gaze away. His friends had to nudge him before he snapped out of his trance. "Guy, who you they look like that?" his friend Chuka asked, grinning. "That girl," Nonso replied, voice low, eyes still on her. "Who is she?" His friends chuckled, but Nonso was serious. He made his way over, his heart pounding, and by the time he stood before her, he felt foolish, but he was not one to back down easily. "Excuse me," Nonso said, smiling, trying to sound casual. "I was wondering if I could get your name." She turned, her gaze falling on him with surprise. There was something regal about the way she looked at him, steady, not flustered by his presence. Her lips curved slightly in amusement, but her voice was calm when she spoke. "I'm Ralia," she said simply, her accent thick and melodic. She was from Zamfara, as he would later learn. "And you?" "Nonso," he said, "from Enugu." They exchanged a few more words, but Ralia was reserved, distant, polite. Nonso had never been one to chase after women. Usually his charm and looks did the work. But this time, things were different. He felt something deeper, an inexplicable connection. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had known her long before this moment. Her presence stirred something in him, something he hadn't expected. Few days, Nonso found himself thinking about Ralia constantly. He went out of his way to run into her at Mami Market, during camp activities, even at evening bonfire nights. But no matter how hard he tried to get close to her, Ralia remained distant. She was polite but uninterested, as if guarding herself from him. One evening, after they both attended a lecture, Nonso caught up with her. "Ralia," he said, breathless from jogging to catch her. "Wait." She stopped and turned, her eyes sharp with curiosity. "You've been avoiding me," Nonso said, smiling, but there was a seriousness behind his words. "I like you, and I want to get to know you. You don't feel the same?" Ralia looked at him with a calm intensity. "It's not about feelings," she said. "I'm not here for a camp romance, Nonso. I've seen enough to know that these things rarely last. After camp, we'll go back to our lives. You'll return to the east, and I'll go back to Zamfara. Why start something that won't last?" Nonso wasn't deterred. If anything, her resistance only deepened his resolve. "You don't know that. I'm willing to prove to you that this isn't just about camp. I'll follow you back to Zamfara if I have to." Ralia laughed, a soft, disbelieving sound. "You'd leave everything behind to come to a place where you know no one, for a girl you barely know." "I don't know why." Nonso said, his voice soft but firm. But I feel like I've known you forever, and I'll do whatever it takes to show you I'm serious. As the camp days passed, Ralia began to soften. Nonso's persistence wore down her defenses, and despite herself, she found him charming. He was funny, intelligent, and respectful, qualities that intrigued her. She began to let him in, little by little. They shared long conversations late into the night, discussing everything from their dreams to the differences between their cultures. Nonso kept his word. After camp, he redeployed to Zamfara, much to Ralia's amazement. She admired his determination, and slowly their bond deepened. He became a familiar face in her family's home, and while her older sister Amina welcomed him with open arms, her mother remained cautious. She was cordial, but it was clear she didn't fully trust the relationship. Your people are different from us, Haja Binta said one evening. Can you live in peace with that, Nonso? The way we dress, the way we pray, the way we live, it's not like what you know. I'm not here to change Ralia, Nonso replied. I love her for who she is, and I'm willing to learn and respect your ways. Ralia's heart swelled with pride and fear. Could love truly bridge the deep cultural divide between them? Months passed, and their love only grew stronger. Nonso and Ralia talked about their future, dreamed about what life would look like after NYSC. They applied for jobs, and when Nonso secured a position in Lagos and Ralia got one in Zamfara, they vowed to make the long distance work. Every weekend, Nonso would visit, and they cherished their time together. One weekend, Nonso knelt before her and proposed. Ralia's heart raced with joy and disbelief. But even as she said yes, she knew the real challenge was yet to come. Ralia gazed out of the window of the old bus, the Nigerian countryside speeding past in a blur of green and brown. The road to Enugu was long, and the closer they got, the more nervous she became. Her hands trembled slightly in her lap, betraying the calm she tried to maintain on the surface. She glanced over at Nonso, seated beside her. His eyes were closed, his head resting against the seat as the bus jostled over potholes. He looked peaceful, as if this journey was just another trip, just another step in their love story. But Ralia's mind was a whirlwind. Her mother's words echoed in her ears. Ralia, this is madness. Haja Binta had fumed the night before she left for Enugu. Why would you go with him? Have you forgotten who you are? How can you trust him, trust his people, when you know what they think of us? You are running into the arms of a family that won't accept you. Can't you see? Ralia had stood firm, but it wasn't easy. Tears had welled in her mother's eyes, the same eyes that had always been her strength. Binta had raised her daughters alone after their father's death, and Ralia knew her mother only wanted to protect her. I love him, Mama, Ralia had said, her voice shaking but resolute. He loves me. He has proven that again and again. I know it won't be easy, but I can't live in fear of what might happen. I have to try. Her mother had paced, her voice low and urgent. Love is not enough. You are not just any girl. You carry the weight of your father's legacy, of our family's name. Have you thought of what it means to marry into his world, a world so different from ours? Have you thought of how his mother will see you? The words stung, but Ralia held her ground. Mama, I know this won't be simple, but I believe in Nonso. We've fought so much to be together. I have to see this through. With that, she had left, her mother's reluctant blessing following her out the door. But now, on the road to meet Nonso's family, doubt gnawed at her heart. What if her mother was right? When they arrived at Nonso's family home, Ralia felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. The house was modest, nestled in the outskirts of Enugu, surrounded by wide open fields and distant hills. It was beautiful, but she couldn't shake the growing sense of unease. Nonso squeezed her hand as they walked toward the front door. Don't worry, he said softly. My mom will love you. But Ralia wasn't so sure Nonso's mother, Mama Neka, was waiting inside. The moment they stepped into the living room, Ralia felt the weight of the woman's stare. Neka sat with her arms crossed, her gaze fixed on Ralia with a cold intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. Her face was etched with deep lines of suspicion, and the smile Ralia had hoped for never came. Ralia could feel the tension rising as they sat in Nonso's mother's living room. The walls seemed to close in around her as Mama Neka's eyes bore into her, sharp and unrelenting. She had felt anxious before, but now, sitting here, she realized the situation was much worse than she had anticipated. Nonso shifted beside her, sensing the hostility that hung in the air. But before he could say anything, his mother spoke. So this is the girl, the one who led you away to that distant place, Mama Neka said coldly, her voice trembling with anger. You left your home, your family, for her. Ralia felt her breath catch in her throat, her palms growing cold and clammy. The tone in Mama Neka's voice wasn't just one of disappointment, it was filled with venom. She had never heard anyone speak to her with such open disdain before. Mama, it's not like that. Nonso tried to explain, reaching out to his mother. I did my national service just like everyone else. It wasn't only because of Ralia, but his mother was having none of it. Don't lie to me, Nonso. You think I don't know? I knew something was fishy. You've never left my side, but you stayed in Zamfara for a whole year, abandoning your home, abandoning me. Her voice cracked and her eyes glistened with unshed tears. And now you bring her here, this Hausa girl. You want me to believe it's all a coincidence? The words hit Ralia like a slap in the face. She had prepared herself for discomfort, even suspicion, but not for this level of hostility. Her body felt frozen in place, her mind reeling from the confrontation. She could sense Nonso tensing beside her, his frustration barely contained. Mama, stop it! Nonso said, his voice tight with emotion. I didn't just come here with Ralia to introduce her. I want you to know, I've asked her to marry me. The words fell into the room like a bomb. Ralia's heart raced as Mama Neka stared at her son, eyes wide in disbelief, as if the ground had just shifted beneath her feet. Tears, this time of shock and betrayal, brimmed in her eyes. What? She whispered, the word barely escaping her lips. You you proposed to her. You made such a decision without me? Ralia looked down at her hands, feeling the sting of the accusation. The weight of Nonso's mother's disapproval was suffocating, but this felt like a fatal blow. How could Nonso have asked her to marry him without discussing it with his family, knowing what lay ahead? Nonso tried to explain, his voice full of urgency. Mama, I love her. I wanted to tell you in person. I didn't want to rush things, but I'm serious about Ralia. Please try to understand. But Mama Neka wasn't listening anymore. She stood abruptly, her face flushed with anger and disbelief. You love her? Love? She scoffed bitterly. You think that's enough? How could you do this without me, Nonso? You want to marry this girl? You've let her bewitch you just like I feared. Ralia flinched at the word bewitch, her heart sinking deeper with every second. She glanced at Nonso, who was struggling to keep his composure, but it was clear that the situation was slipping beyond his control. You should have asked for my consent, Mama Neka continued, her voice rising. You think you can just walk in here and make decisions like this? You don't understand what you're doing. Nonso, desperate, stepped forward. Mama, please, you haven't even tried to get to know Ralia. She's not trying to hurt us. I love her and I want to spend my life with her. But his words were met with nothing but coldness. I won't allow her to stay under this roof. Neka snapped, pointing toward the door. She can't sleep here tonight, not after what you've done. Nonso's face paled. He stood frozen, caught between the two women he loved most in the world. Ralia watched the conflict tear through him, seeing the pain in his eyes. She couldn't believe her ears. Nonso's heart sank, but he tried one last time. Mama, she's my fiancée. Please just let her stay the night. We leave in the morning for Lagos. But his mother shook her head, her voice cracking with raw emotion. No, if she stays, I will leave. Fine. Is that what you want, Mama? Nonso snapped, reaching out to Ralia. Nonso, frustrated and angry, takes Ralia's hand. Let's go, babe. We can spend the night in one of the guest houses in town. And then came the final blow. Mama began to cry, her sobs racking her small frame as she looked at Nonso with eyes full of pain. Do you know what I went through to raise you? Do you know the sacrifices I made? Her voice trembled and she wiped her face roughly. After your father died, his family threw me out, took everything we had. I was left with nothing, just you. I had to steal food, Nonso, steal bread from the market just to feed you. I almost lost my life for you. I was beaten in front of everyone for trying to keep you alive. And now you want to walk away? You're choosing her over me? Her words sliced through Nonso like a knife. He felt a wave of guilt and shame wash over him, threatening to pull him under. His mother's tears, her stories of hardship, these were the memories that had shaped him, and now they weighed on him like a crushing burden. Mama, please don't cry, he said, his voice weak, defeated. I'm not abandoning you. I love you. I just need you to trust me. But she continued to cry, her sobs filling the room, and Nonso felt himself crumbling. He turned to Ralia, his eyes filled with regret. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'll take you to the guest house and I'll come get you in the morning. I need to stay with her tonight. Please understand. Ralia's heart broke at that moment. She looked at Nonso, the man she had fought for, the man she had believed in, and saw the guilt and pain on his face. She understood. Oh, she understood the weight of family. But the hurt still cut deep. They left the house in silence, Ralia's mind swirling with emotions she couldn't even begin to unpack. When they arrived at the small, dimly lit guest house, Nonso stood by the door holding her hand. Please, Ralia, he said, his voice trembling. Just give me time. She'll come around. I promise. Ralia looked into his eyes, but the hurt was too fresh, too raw. Why didn't you tell me how your mother felt about us? About you staying in Zamfara? Nonso lowered his gaze, ashamed. I didn't want to scare you. I thought I could handle it. I'm sorry. She didn't respond. She simply nodded, her heart too heavy to speak. He kissed her forehead gently, whispered one last apology, and left her standing alone in the small room. The door closed, and the silence felt like a weight pressing down on her chest. She sat down on the bed, staring into the darkness, her thoughts swirling in an endless loop. How had it come to this? She had fought her own mother for this love. She had believed in Nonso's promises, believed that love would be enough. But now, sitting here alone, the walls of the guest house closing in on her, she couldn't help but wonder if she had made a mistake. The tears came slowly at first, then faster, until she was sobbing into her hands, the full weight of the day crashing over her. She cried for her broken heart, for the uncertainty of their future, for the fear that her mother's warnings had been right all along, and in the quiet of that lonely room, with only her thoughts and fears to keep her company, Ralia wondered if love was truly enough to bridge the gap between two worlds so far apart. Would she ever be enough for Nonso? Would his mother's love and loyalty to her son overshadow the bond they had fought so hard to create? With dawn approaching, Ralia felt a spark of determination ignite within her. She couldn't let their love slip away without a fight, but would she have the strength to confront the looming challenges ahead? Or would the deep rooted divides of their families tear them apart for good? Tomorrow would bring answers, but for now, the silence spoke volumes, and Ralia was left alone with her fears, her love, and the dawning realization that the hardest battles were yet to come. Thank you for watching. Till next time.